Close your eyes for a moment and let your breathing slow. Feel yourself settling into comfort as we begin our gentle journey tonight. We're going to drift back through the mists of time, to an age when the Caribbean seas shimmered under endless blue skies and wooden ships carved their way through crystal waters. Tonight, we'll discover a fascinating truth about those legendary pirates and how they really spent their hard-won treasure. You might imagine pirates as we see them in movies, counting gold coins by candlelight, burying chests on mysterious islands. But the reality was far different and far more human. As you relax deeper into your pillow, let yourself be carried away to those sun-drenched ports where pirates actually lived, laughed, and yes, spent every last piece of eight they could get their hands on. The warm Caribbean breeze whispers through your imagination now, carrying with it the scent of salt air and distant spices. Let your mind drift gently toward those bustling harbors where real pirates once walked, their boots clicking against weathered wooden docks, their pockets heavy with coins they couldn't wait to spend. Picture, if you will, the harbor at Port Royal, Jamaica in the year 1670. The morning sun casts long, golden shadows across the water, and the air hums with the gentle sounds of a port awakening. Ships creak softly at their moorings, their masts swaying like sleepy trees in the warm breeze. This was once called the wickedest city in the world, but in this moment, as dawn breaks over the harbor, it seems almost peaceful. The cobblestone streets still glisten with morning dew, and you can almost hear the soft padding of bare feet as sailors and pirates begin to stir. Some are stumbling home from long nights in the taverns, while others are just beginning their day. The air carries the mingled scents of the sea, fresh bread baking in distant ovens, and the lingering aroma of rum that seems to permeate every corner of this legendary place. Now let your mind drift to a particular figure walking slowly down one of these quiet streets. His name is Thomas, though most know him simply as Black Tom, not for any fearsome reputation, but merely for his sun-darkened skin and the black bandana he always wears. He's just returned from 3 months at sea, and his leather pouch jingles softly with Spanish silver, 47 pieces of 8, more money than a common laborer might see in 2 years. Watch as Tom pauses at a street corner, feeling the weight of his newfound wealth. In this moment, he is richer than he has ever been in his life. The morning light catches the worn fabric of his shirt, and you can see the dreams playing across his weathered face. Perhaps he's thinking of the small farm he once spoke of buying, or the woman he left behind in Bristol so many years ago. But as the sun climbs higher and the streets begin to fill with life, Tom's steps turn inevitably toward the familiar wooden sign of the Crow's Nest Tavern. The building leans slightly, as if weary from years of supporting the weight of countless sailors' stories. Its windows glow warmly in the morning light, and even from the street you can hear the gentle murmur of conversation and the soft clink of tankards. This is where our story truly begins, in the quiet understanding that pirates, for all their legendary status, were simply men and women driven by very human desires. And the greatest of these desires, it turns out, was not for treasure hoards or buried gold, but for the simple, immediate pleasures that made their dangerous lives bearable. Step inside the Crow's Nest with Tom, and feel the cool shadows embrace you after the bright morning sun. The floor is worn smooth by countless boots, and the air is thick with the comforting scents of pipe tobacco, roasted meat, and that ever-present hint of rum. Somewhere in the back, someone is playing a gentle tune on a fiddle, the melody drifting lazily through the warm air like smoke from the hearth. The tavern keeper, a stout woman named Mary, with kind eyes and greying hair, looks up from wiping down a wooden table. She's seen 1,000 sailors come and go, each with silver in their pockets and grand plans for their future. Her smile is knowing, but not unkind as Tom approaches the bar, his hand unconsciously touching the weight of his purse. "Morning, Tom," she says softly, her voice carrying the lilt of someone who has spent years speaking over the gentle din of conversation. "I see you've had a profitable voyage." Tom nods, trying to appear casual, but there's an excitement in his eyes that Mary has seen countless times before. "Aye," he says, settling onto a wooden stool that creaks softly under his weight. "Took a Spanish merchant ship 2 weeks out of Cartagena. Clean work, no violence needed." This was often the reality of piracy, far removed from the dramatic sword fights of legend. Many encounters were simple matters of intimidation and negotiation. The Spanish ship's captain, faced with a crew of determined pirates, had simply handed over the strongbox and wished them well on their journey. Business, in its way, conducted under the endless Caribbean sky. Mary pours Tom a measure of rum from a ceramic jug, the liquid catching the light like liquid amber. The first drink of the morning is always ceremonial for a pirate returning to port, not a desperate gulp, but a slow, savouring sip that marks the transition from the dangerous uncertainty of the sea to the warm certainty of solid ground beneath their feet. 47 pieces, Tom says quietly, taking that first contemplative sip. The rum burns gently, warming him from the inside. "More than I've ever had at once." Mary nods, continuing to clean glasses with practiced meditative motions. She's heard this exact conversation hundreds of times. The number changes. Sometimes it's 20 pieces, sometimes 60. Once, memorably, it was nearly 200, but the tone is always the same. Wonder, mixed with the intoxicating possibility of a different life. "And what'll you do with it?" Mary asks, though she already knows the answer. They always know the answer, both the asking and the answering part of this familiar ritual. Tom stares into his rum for a long moment, watching the way the light plays across its surface. "Well," he says slowly, "I've been thinking. There's a small plot of land for sale just outside Spanish Town. Good soil, they say. A man could grow sugar cane, maybe keep a few chickens." His voice trails off, and in the silence that follows, you can almost hear the weight of dreams settling like dust in the warm air. This is the moment that plays out in every pirate's story. The pause between the earning and the spending, where anything seems possible and the future stretches out like an uncharted ocean. But even as Tom speaks of farms and respectable futures, his eyes are already drifting toward the gaming tables in the corner, where 2 other sailors are engaged in a lazy game of dice. The soft rattle of ivory against wood creates a hypnotic rhythm, like waves against a distant shore. And though Tom doesn't yet know it, that gentle sound is already calling to something deep in his sailor's heart. Let your own breathing slow as we follow Tom's story, because his experience was echoed thousands of times across the Caribbean during the golden age of piracy. Each time a ship returned to port, each time silver changed hands, the same beautiful and tragic dance would begin. The dance between dreams of tomorrow and the irresistible pull of today's pleasures. Mary, wise in the ways of sailors, says nothing more about the land outside Spanish Town. Instead, she continues her work, occasionally glancing up to nod at other patrons as they drift in and out of the tavern. The morning grows warmer, and the crow's nest slowly fills with the gentle sounds of men and women beginning their day of rest after long months at sea. At a table near the window, an older pirate named Captain Rodriguez sits alone, staring out at the harbor. His hair has gone silver, and his hands, wrapped around a pewter mug, show the deep lines and scars of 30 years at sea. He made his fortune long ago, took a Spanish treasure galleon in the waters off Panama, and walked away with enough gold to live like a king for the rest of his days. But Rodriguez is not living like a king. He's living like a sailor, because that's all he's ever known how to be. His gold is long gone, spent in taverns just like this one, on drinks just like the one he's nursing now. He's not bitter about it, There's a peaceful resignation in his weathered face as he watches the morning sun dance on the water. This is the truth about pirate treasure that history books rarely tell. It wasn't hoarded or buried. It was lived. It was transformed almost immediately into experiences, into moments of joy and connection, into the simple human pleasure of having enough to share with friends in warm, welcoming places like the Crow's Nest. Tom finishes his first rum and signals for another. The alcohol is beginning to work its gentle magic, softening the edges of his tiredness and amplifying the golden glow of his good fortune. He turns slightly on his stool, making himself more open to conversation, and it's not long before a younger pirate named Jamie slides up beside him. Jamie is perhaps 20, with sun-bleached hair and the eager energy of someone still new to the pirate life. He's been watching Tom since he arrived, recognizing the telltale signs of a successful homecoming, the relaxed posture, the quality of the rum, the way Tom's hand moves confidently to his purse without the worried hesitation of someone counting every coin. "Heard you had good hunting," Jamie says, signaling Mary for a drink of his own. His voice carries the slight accent of someone from the American colonies, probably Virginia, by the soft way he rounds his vowels. Tom nods, feeling generous in the way that only comes with a full purse and good rum. "Fair enough," he says modestly, but there's pride in his voice. "The sea was kind to us this voyage." They talk quietly for a while, sharing the comfortable camaraderie of men who understand each other's lives. Jamie tells of his own recent adventures, a smaller prize, only 8 pieces of 8, but earned through his first real battle, a brief skirmish with a French merchant ship that had tried to outrun them through the shallow waters near Tortuga. As Jamie talks, his eyes bright with the memory of adventure, Tom finds himself reaching for his purse. Almost without thinking, he places 2 silver coins on the bar between them. "For your next drink," he says simply, and the gesture is met with Jamie's surprised gratitude. This is how it begins, this ancient ritual of sailors sharing their fortune, not through grand gestures or calculated generosity, but through small acts of fellowship that feel as natural as breathing. Tom's 47 pieces of 8 have become 45, and he's barely noticed the difference. The morning drifts toward noon, and the Crow's Nest continues to fill. Each new arrival brings stories, laughter, and the gentle energy of people celebrating simply being alive. The tavern becomes a constellation of small conversations, each one punctuated by the soft clink of coins changing hands as drinks are bought, meals are shared, and small debts of friendship are cheerfully settled. At the gaming table, the dice continue their gentle percussion, and gradually Tom finds himself drawn toward the sound. It's not greed that pulls him. His purse is still heavy, his needs still met. It's something more fundamental, the deep human need for excitement, for the thrill of uncertainty that has defined his life at sea. The game is simple, sailor's dice, where fortunes can change with each roll, but the stakes are rarely high enough to ruin anyone completely. Tom settles into an empty chair, placing 5 pieces of 8 on the worn wood of the table. The other players, a mix of pirates, merchants, and local artisans, welcome him with nods and quiet smiles. For the next hour, Tom's silver flows back and forth across the table like a gentle tide. He wins some, loses some, and gradually finds himself caught in the hypnotic rhythm of the game. The rum continues to flow, paid for with casual generosity, as different players take turns buying rounds for the table. This is where most pirate treasure went, not into buried chests or secret hoards, but into these moments of shared pleasure and friendly competition. The silver that had once filled Spanish coffers, mined from the mountains of Peru and Bolivia, now circulated through the taverns and gaming houses of the Caribbean, bringing joy and excitement to men and women who lived on the razor's edge between fortune and disaster. By mid-afternoon, Tom's original 47 pieces have dwindled to 31. but he feels no distress at the loss. The 16 silver coins haven't simply vanished. They've been transformed into an afternoon of pleasure, into new friendships, into stories he'll carry with him long after the silver is gone. As the sun begins its slow descent toward the horizon, painting the harbor in shades of gold and rose, Tom finally pushes back from the gaming table. His head is pleasantly light from the rum, and his heart is warm with the camaraderie of the day. Tomorrow he'll think again about that plot of land outside Spanish Town, but tonight he's content to simply exist in this moment of abundance. He makes his way to the tavern's main room, where Mary is serving the evening meal. The scent of roasted pork and fresh bread fills the air, and Tom realizes he hasn't eaten since dawn. He orders a generous portion, along with a bottle of Mary's finest rum, to share with anyone who cares to join him. This sharing of food and drink was one of the most important rituals in pirate society. Men who might be enemies tomorrow could sit together tonight, united by the simple human need for nourishment and companionship. Tom's table gradually fills with other sailors, each contributing something to the informal feast. Someone produces a wheel of cheese acquired in their latest voyage. Another adds a jar of preserved fruit from Jamaica. As they eat and drink, stories begin to flow as freely as the rum. Tales of distant ports and strange encounters, of storms weathered and battles fought, of friends lost and fortunes found. Each story is a treasure in its own right, more valuable than silver because it connects them to something larger than themselves, to the great adventure of life at sea. Old Captain Rodriguez eventually joins their table, his weathered face animated as he tells of the time he outwitted 3 Spanish warships in the straits between Cuba and Florida. His story is probably embellished, they all are, but that doesn't matter. What matters is the way it makes them all feel connected to something epic and meaningful. As Rodriguez talks, Tom finds himself placing another coin on the table, this time to pay for the captain's meal. It's another small gesture, but in the context of pirate society, it carries deep significance. It says that Tom recognizes Rodriguez's status as an elder, that he values the old man's stories and experience. The silver that moments ago had been mere currency becomes a token of respect and fellowship. The evening deepens, and candles are lit throughout the tavern. Their warm, flickering light transforms the crow's nest into something magical, a place where the ordinary concerns of life fade away, replaced by laughter, music, and the timeless pleasure of human connection. Someone produces a fiddle, and soon the air fills with gentle melodies that speak of home and adventure, of love and loss, of the eternal sea that calls to every sailor's heart. Tom finds himself singing along to songs he learned years ago in taverns just like this one, his voice joining the chorus of men and women who understand that some treasures can't be counted in gold or silver. By now, Tom's purse has grown lighter still. 23 pieces of 8 remain, but they feel less important with each passing hour. The true wealth of the evening lies in the warmth of the candlelight on familiar faces, in the taste of good rum shared with friends, in the feeling of being part of something larger than himself. This was the secret that pirates understood instinctively, that money's only value lies in what it can be transformed into. And in a world where death might come with the next storm or the next battle, the wisest transformation was always into immediate joy, into shared experience, into memories that would last as long as life itself. As the night progresses, other entertainments begin to emerge. Someone starts a card game at a corner table, the stakes low, but the competition fierce. Others gather around to tell riddles or share jokes, their laughter bubbling up like champagne. In another corner, 2 pirates engage in a friendly arm wrestling contest, cheered on by a small crowd of supporters. Tom participates in all of it, his remaining silver flowing steadily into the communal pot of pleasure. He loses 3 coins, backing the wrong man in the arm wrestling contest, wins 2 back correctly, guessing a riddle about mermaids, and spends another buying rum for a young woman who's regaling the tavern with bawdy songs that make everyone laugh until their sides ache. This young woman, who goes by the name Red Sarah for her magnificent copper hair, represents another important aspect of how pirates spent their money. She's not just a tavern entertainer, she's a pirate herself, recently returned from a successful venture in the waters around Martinique. But tonight, she's chosen to spend her earnings not on her own drinks, but on creating joy for others through her music and stories. Sarah's presence reminds us that piracy was not exclusively a male profession. Women like Anne Bonny, Mary Read, and countless others whose names have been lost to history sailed the Caribbean seas, fought alongside men, and spent their share of treasure in exactly the same ways. They sought the same basic human pleasures: companionship, excitement, the simple joy of having enough to be generous with others. As Sarah finishes a particularly clever song about a parrot who learned to speak Spanish and subsequently led his pirate crew to a treasure-laden Spanish galleon, Tom impulsively places his last gold doubloon, a beautiful piece he'd been saving, on the table before her. It's not payment for entertainment, it's recognition of artistry, of the way she's transformed the entire atmosphere of the tavern with her talent. Sarah picks up the coin, examines it in the candlelight, and nods at Tom with genuine appreciation. But instead of pocketing it, she signals to Mary for another round of drinks for everyone in the tavern. The gold piece that Tom had treasured becomes the foundation for a moment of universal celebration, as pirates, merchants, sailors, and townspeople all raise their glasses together. This is the alchemy that transformed the Spanish Empire's silver into something far more valuable: human connection, shared joy, the kind of wealth that multiplies when divided. Tom's original 47 pieces of 8 have now become part of something larger, a web of generosity and fellowship that encompasses the entire tavern. By midnight, Tom's purse contains only 14 silver coins, but he feels richer than he did that morning when it held 47. The difference has been invested in something that bank vaults could never contain, in friendships forged over shared drinks, in stories that will be retold for years to come, in the warm memory of an evening when everything seemed possible. As the night begins to wind down, Tom finds himself in quiet conversation with Mary, the tavern keeper. She's seen thousands of pirates come and go, watched fortunes appear and disappear like morning mist over the harbor. Her wisdom has been earned through years of observation, and she speaks with the gentle authority of someone who understands the deeper currents of human nature. "The land outside Spanish Town," she says quietly, refilling Tom's cup with her personal reserve of rum, a smoother, more refined spirit than what she serves to casual customers. "It'll still be there tomorrow." Tom nods, understanding both what she said and what she hasn't said. The land will be there, but this moment, this perfect evening of companionship and celebration, will never come again. Each night like this is unique, irreplaceable, more precious than any real estate, because it can never be recovered once it's lost. They sit in comfortable silence for a while, watching the last of the evening's revelries wind down. Some pirates have already stumbled home or found corners to sleep in. Others continue their quiet conversations, their voices soft and contemplative in the candlelit warmth of the tavern. At a nearby table, Captain Rodriguez is showing a young sailor how to tie a particular knot, his weathered hands moving slowly and patiently as he demonstrates the technique. It's a small moment of mentorship, the kind of knowledge transfer that has kept sailing culture alive for centuries. No money changes hands for this lesson, but it's as valuable as any coin Tom has spent tonight. This sharing of knowledge was another important way pirates spent their wealth, not in direct payment, but in creating the conditions where learning could happen. By buying drinks and meals, by creating comfortable spaces for conversation, They fostered the exchange of skills and stories that made their dangerous profession possible. Tom watches Rodriguez work with the rope, remembering his own early days at sea when an older sailor had taken the time to teach him the art of reading wind and weather. That knowledge had saved his life dozens of times over the years, and it had cost the old sailor nothing but a few hours of patience and attention. As the candles burn lower and the night deepens, Tom makes a decision that surprises even himself. He approaches Rodriguez's table and quietly places 5 silver coins beside the old captain's elbow. When Rodriguez looks up questioningly, Tom simply says, "For teaching, for all the things you've taught all of us over the years." Rodriguez stares at the coins for a long moment, then looks up at Tom with eyes that glisten slightly in the candlelight. "You don't need to pay me for sharing what I know, lad." "I'm not paying you," Tom replies softly. "I'm honoring you. There's a difference." Rodriguez nods slowly, understanding. He doesn't pocket the coins immediately. Instead, he calls Mary over and uses the silver to buy a round of drinks for everyone still awake in the tavern, perhaps a dozen people at this late hour. It's his way of transforming Tom's gesture into something even larger, a celebration of the community that has sustained them all through their dangerous lives. This exchange illustrates one of the most important aspects of how pirates actually spent their money. It wasn't reckless waste or mindless indulgence. It was a sophisticated social system based on honor, generosity, and mutual support. The silver that flowed through pirate communities served as more than currency. It was the physical manifestation of respect, friendship, and shared identity. As the final drinks are distributed, Tom realizes that his purse now contains only 9 pieces of 8. In less than 18 hours, he spent 38 pieces of silver, more money than most honest laborers would see in a year. And yet he feels no regret, no sense of loss. The money has been well spent, transformed into experiences and connections that will enrich his life far longer than any buried treasure ever could. The tavern begins to empty as the night reaches its deepest hour. Some patrons drift home to beds in boarding houses or small apartments. Others, including Tom, will sleep right here in the crow's nest, curled up on benches or stretched out on the floor near the dying fire. Mary provides blankets for a small fee, another silver coin from Tom's dwindling store, but even this practical expense feels like part of the evening's larger celebration. As Tom settles into a corner near the hearth, wrapping himself in a rough wool blanket that smells of salt air and pipe tobacco, he reflects on the day's expenses. The money has bought him food, drink, entertainment, and companionship. It has allowed him to be generous, to gain respect, to participate fully in the social life of his community. Most importantly, it has transformed him from a solitary individual into part of something larger, a member of the Brotherhood of the Sea. This sense of belonging was perhaps the most valuable thing pirate treasure could buy. Men and women who lived on the margins of society, who had abandoned conventional life for the dangers and freedoms of the sea, needed to create their own communities, their own systems of meaning and support. Money was the tool that made these communities possible, enabling the generosity and celebration that bound them together. Tom drifts towards sleep, listening to the gentle sounds of the tavern settling into quiet. The soft breathing of sleeping pirates, the creak of old wood expanding and contracting in the night air, the distant whisper of waves against the harbor docks. His 9 remaining pieces of 8 rest safely in his inner pocket, but they feel almost incidental now, like an afterthought to the real treasure he's accumulated during the day. Let your own breathing slow and deepen as we follow Tom into his dreams. In sleep, he revisits the day's pleasures, the taste of good rum, the warmth of new friendships, the satisfaction of being able to share his good fortune with others. These dreams are more vivid and lasting than any vision of buried gold could ever be, because they're built from real experiences, real connections with other human beings. The morning comes gently to Port Royal, as it always does. The Caribbean sun rises over the harbor like a blessing, painting the water in shades of gold and turquoise that seem almost too beautiful to be real. Tom wakes slowly, his head clear despite the previous night's indulgences. The good rum and better company have left him feeling refreshed rather than depleted. Mary is already up, moving quietly through the tavern as she prepares for another day. She's swept the floors, banked the fire, and started a pot of coffee that fills the air with its rich, promising aroma. Tom stretches, feeling the pleasant stiffness that comes from sleeping on something other than a ship's hammock, and makes his way to the bar. "Morning, Tom," Mary says with a smile, pouring him a cup of coffee without being asked. "Sleep well?" "Better than I have in months," Tom replies honestly. The coffee is strong and bitter, perfect for clearing away the last wisps of sleep. He reaches for his purse to pay for the drink, but Mary waves away his money. "On the house," she says. "You were generous enough last night." This small gesture, this gift of coffee and kindness, represents another aspect of how pirate economics actually worked. Generosity bred generosity, creating cycles of mutual support that made their harsh lives more bearable. Tom spending the night before has earned him not just memories, but ongoing goodwill that might prove valuable in ways he can't yet imagine. As the morning progresses, other pirates begin to stir. Some look worse for wear after their night of celebration, but most seem refreshed, ready to face whatever the day might bring. There's Red Sarah, her copper hair catching the morning light as she shares breakfast with two younger pirates who are hanging on her every word. There's Jamie, counting his remaining coins with the careful attention of someone learning to manage his first real money. And there, in his usual spot by the window, sits Captain Rodriguez, looking out at the harbor with the same peaceful expression Tom noticed the day before. His silver hair gleams in the sunlight, and his weathered hands are steady as he sips his morning rum, the first drink of the day, the ritual that marks the transition from sleep to wakefulness. Tom joins Rodriguez at his table, and they sit in comfortable silence for a while, watching the harbor come alive. Fishing boats are heading out for the day's catch, their sails white against the blue water. Merchant ships are loading cargo under the supervision of sweating dock workers. Life continues, as it always does, with its mixture of routine and possibility. "That land outside Spanish Town," Rodriguez says quietly, as if he's been thinking about Tom's plans all night. "Good soil, you said?" Tom nods. "So I'm told. Fellow who owns it now says it'll grow anything, sugar cane, tobacco, even some of those new coffee plants they're bringing up from South America." Rodriguez considers this information, then reaches into his own purse and places 20 pieces of 8 on the table between them. Tom stares at the coins in surprise. 20 pieces would be enough to make a substantial down payment on the land, maybe even buy it outright if the price was right. "You honored me last night," Rodriguez says simply. "Let me return the favor. Buy your land, Tom. Try farming for a season or two. If it doesn't suit you, the sea will still be here." Tom is speechless for a moment, overwhelmed by the older man's generosity. This is perhaps the most important lesson about how pirates spent their money. It wasn't just individual indulgence, but community investment. Rodriguez has chosen to use his wealth to help a younger man start a new life, creating possibilities that wouldn't exist otherwise. "I can't accept this," Tom says finally, though his voice lacks conviction. The 20 pieces represent hope, opportunity, the chance to transform his life in ways he's only dreamed about. "Of course you can," Rodriguez replies with a gentle smile. "What else am I going to do with it? I'm too old to start farming, too set in my ways to change my life. But you're young enough to try something different. Take the money, Tom. Make something of yourself that doesn't depend on Spanish silver and favorable winds." Tom looks down at the coins, then back at Rodriguez's weathered face. In that moment, he understands something profound about pirate society. It wasn't just about taking from others, but about giving to each other. The wealth they captured from Spanish treasure ships became the foundation for dreams, for new beginnings, for the possibility of transformation. With hands that shake slightly from emotion, Tom scoops up the 20 pieces of 8 and adds them to his own remaining 9. 29 pieces total, enough to buy the land, with some left over for seeds, tools, maybe even a small house. His mind races with possibilities, with visions of a life built on solid ground rather than the shifting deck of a ship. But even as he pockets the coins, Tom makes a silent promise to himself. If the farming venture succeeds, if he manages to build a prosperous life on land, he'll remember this moment. He'll remember Rodriguez's generosity and find ways to pass it forward, to help other young pirates who dream of different lives. This cycle of generosity was one of the most important but least understood aspects of pirate society. The treasure they captured didn't just disappear into individual indulgence. It became seed money for new ventures, stake money for fresh starts, investment capital for dreams that might never have been possible otherwise. Tom and Rodriguez spend the rest of the morning discussing practical matters. The best time of year to plant sugarcane, the challenges of hiring reliable workers, the importance of building good relationships with neighboring farmers. It's the kind of conversation that might happen between any mentor and student, but it's made possible by the redistribution of Spanish silver through the informal networks of pirate society. As noon approaches, Tom realizes it's time to make a decision. He could stay in Port Royal, continue his life as a pirate, spend his remaining silver in the comfortable routines of tavern life. Or he could take Rodriguez's gift and Rodriguez's advice, strike out for Spanish Town and the plot of land that might become his future. The decision, when it comes, feels inevitable. Tom finishes his rum, stands up from the table, and extends his hand to Rodriguez. "Thank you," he says simply, "for everything." Rodriguez shakes his hand with the firm grip of someone who has made his living with his hands. "Make me proud, lad. And if farming doesn't work out, remember, the sea will always welcome you back." Tom gathers his few possessions and heads for the door of the Crow's Nest. As he pauses on the threshold, he looks back at the tavern that has been his home away from home for so many years. Mary waves from behind the bar, her smile warm with approval for his decision. Red Sarah raises her cup in a mock toast, her eyes twinkling with mischief and encouragement. This is how most pirate treasure stories actually ended. Not with dramatic searches for buried gold, but with quiet transformations, with money changing hands in acts of friendship and support, with wealth being converted into new possibilities for human flourishing. Tom steps out into the bright Caribbean sunshine, his purse heavy with silver and his heart full of hope. Behind him, the Crow's Nest continues its eternal function as a place where sailors can find warmth, companionship, and the chance to transform their dangerous earnings into something more lasting than gold. As Tom walks toward the livery stable where he can hire a horse for the journey to Spanish Town, let your mind drift with him toward this new chapter of his story. The silver in his pocket represents more than just purchasing power. It's the accumulated generosity of his pirate community, transformed now into the foundation for a different kind of life. The road to Spanish Town winds through countryside that grows more beautiful with each mile. Palm trees sway gently in the warm breeze, their fronds rustling with a sound like distant applause. The air is sweet with the scent of tropical flowers, and the sky stretches endlessly blue above rolling hills, dotted with wild orchids and bright-colored birds. Tom's horse, a gentle mare named Dulcinea, picks her way carefully along the dusty path. She knows this route well, having carried countless travelers between Port Royal and the inland settlements. Her steady gait and calm temperament give Tom time to think, to plan, to dream about the future he's riding toward. This peaceful journey represents another way that pirate treasure was spent, on transitions, on the practical costs of changing one's life. The few coins Tom paid for the horse rental, the silver he'll spend tonight on a room at a roadside inn, the money he'll need for meals and supplies along the way, all of this is part of the larger transformation of Spanish silver into new possibilities. As the afternoon grows warm, Tom stops at a small tavern called the Wayfarer's Rest. It's a simpler place than the Crow's Nest, catering to travelers and farmers rather than sailors and pirates. The proprietor, an elderly man with kind eyes and sun-weathered skin, serves Tom a simple meal of rice, beans and fresh fruit, along with a cup of coffee that's somehow even better than Mary's. While he eats, Tom listens to the conversations around him. These are different from the talks he's accustomed to in Port Royal. Instead of adventures at sea and battles with Spanish ships, he hears discussions of crop prices, rainfall patterns, the best techniques for training oxen to pull plows. It's a gentler world, one based on seasonal rhythms rather than the unpredictable fortunes of piracy. At a nearby table, two farmers are discussing a mutual problem. One has a field that's perfect for growing tobacco, but lacks the capital to purchase seeds and equipment. The other has money but no suitable land. As Tom listens to their conversation, he realizes he's witnessing another kind of transformation, the way agricultural communities create partnerships and support systems that allow individual prosperity to benefit everyone. When Tom finishes his meal, he quietly approaches the two farmers. "Pardon me," he says politely, "but I couldn't help overhearing your conversation. I'm Thomas Black, and I'm about to purchase a small plot near Spanish Town. I'm new to farming, and I'd be grateful for any advice you might share." The farmers, whose names are Miguel and James, welcome Tom's interest with the easy hospitality of rural people. They explain the challenges and rewards of Caribbean agriculture, the importance of timing planting seasons to avoid hurricanes, the best methods for protecting crops from insects and plant diseases. As they talk, Tom finds himself reaching for his purse again. But this time, instead of spending money on immediate pleasures, he's thinking about investment, about using his silver to build something that will last beyond a single night of celebration. He offers to buy the farmers a round of drinks, and as they continue their conversation over cups of locally distilled rum, Tom begins to understand that his transition from pirate to farmer will require more than just land and seeds. It will require integration into a new community, one with different values and rhythms than the world he's leaving behind. Miguel, whose weathered hands speak of decades working the soil, explains the delicate balance required to grow sugarcane successfully. "The timing must be perfect," he says, his voice carrying the wisdom of hard-earned experience. "Plant too early and the rains will rot your seeds. Plant too late and the dry season will kill your seedlings before they can establish roots." James, younger but equally experienced, adds his own insights about the business side of farming. "And then there's the matter of getting your crop to market," he says. "The Spanish merchants control most of the trade routes, and they're not always fair in their pricing. A man needs to be clever about when and where he sells his harvest." Tom listens carefully, recognizing familiar elements from his pirate days. The need for timing, the importance of understanding your adversaries, the value of building networks of mutual support. The skills that made him successful at sea might translate to success on land, but in gentler, more constructive ways. As the sun begins to set, painting the sky in brilliant shades of orange and pink, Tom prepares to continue his journey. But before he leaves, he makes a decision that surprises even himself. He places 5 pieces of 8 on the table between Miguel and James. "For your partnership," he says quietly. "For the tobacco field and the capital you both need. Consider it an investment from someone who believes in the power of cooperation." The two farmers stare at the silver coins in amazement. 5 pieces of 8 represents significant money to men who measure their wealth in bushels and seasons rather than raids and prizes. But more than the monetary value, they recognize the gesture for what it is, a newcomer's attempt to demonstrate his commitment to becoming part of their community. Miguel speaks first, his voice thick with emotion. "Senor Thomas, this is more generous than we had any right to expect from a stranger." "You're not strangers anymore," Tom replies with a smile. "You're my teachers, and hopefully my future neighbors. Where I come from, we believe that good fortune should be shared, that individual success means nothing if it doesn't lift up the community as a whole." This philosophy, learned in the taverns and gaming houses of Port Royal, now finds new expression in the agricultural communities of inland Jamaica. The silver that once belonged to Spanish kings is being transformed yet again, this time into the foundation for partnerships that will create food, employment, and prosperity for years to come. James carefully gathers up the coins, but his expression shows he understands the responsibility that comes with them. "We'll use this money wisely," he promises, "and when our partnership prospers, we'll remember your generosity. In this part of the world, debts of kindness are never forgotten." Tom nods, understanding that he's just made an investment that goes far beyond mere business. He's bought himself a place in the complex web of relationships that bind rural communities together. The silver that left his purse will return to him in the form of advice, assistance, and friendship, currencies more valuable than any Spanish treasure. As Tom remounts Dulcinea and continues toward Spanish Town, the first stars begin to appear in the darkening sky. The mare's hooves create a gentle rhythm on the dusty path, and somewhere in the distance, night birds call to each other with sounds like liquid music. The air grows cooler, carrying the scent of night-blooming flowers that seem to glow faintly in the moonlight. This peaceful journey through the Caribbean night represents one of the most profound ways that pirate treasure was ultimately spent. On transformation, on the courage to leave behind familiar dangers for unknown possibilities. Every step that Dulcinea takes toward Spanish Town is paid for with silver that once filled Spanish strongboxes, now converted into the hope of a different kind of life. The moon rises full and bright, casting silver light across the landscape that makes everything look magical and ethereal. Tom finds himself thinking not just about the land he's going to purchase, but about all the other pirates who have made similar journeys, carrying their share of treasure away from the sea toward new beginnings on solid ground. Some became farmers, like Tom hopes to do. Others opened shops, became craftsmen, married and raised families in small coastal towns where their past lives gradually faded into local legend. The treasure they carried with them became the seed money for legitimate businesses, the dowries for respectable marriages, the foundations for communities that grew and prospered long after their pirate origins were forgotten. By midnight, Tom reaches a small inn on the outskirts of Spanish Town. The building is modest but welcoming, with warm light spilling from its windows and the sound of quiet conversation drifting from the common room. The innkeeper, a middle-aged woman with the practical manner of someone accustomed to caring for travelers, shows Tom to a clean room with a comfortable bed and a window that looks out over rolling farmland. As Tom settles in for the night, he counts his remaining silver by candlelight. 24 pieces of 8 remain, still a substantial fortune, but one that's already been touched by generosity and investment. The money feels different in his hands now, less like treasure to be hoarded and more like tools to be used for building something meaningful. He falls asleep, listening to the gentle sounds of the countryside, the distant lowing of cattle, the whisper of wind through sugarcane fields, the soft conversation of night insects that seems to welcome him to this new world. His dreams are filled with visions of green growing things, of roots taking hold in fertile soil, of a life built on patience and seasonal rhythms rather than the violent unpredictability of the sea. Morning comes with the sound of roosters crowing and the scent of fresh bread baking in the inn's kitchen. Tom wakes feeling more rested than he has in months, his body grateful for a bed that doesn't rock with ocean swells. Through his window, he can see the sun rising over fields that stretch to the horizon, their neat rows speaking of human care and agricultural hope. Over breakfast, fresh eggs, warm bread and coffee that seems to grow better the farther he travels from the sea, Tom talks with other guests about the local land market. There's a merchant from Kingston who knows the property Tom is interested in, and a local banker who explains the practical details of property transfer and agricultural loans. This gathering of information represents another transformation of Tom's pirate skills. The same instincts that helped him identify profitable targets at sea now serve him in evaluating land purchases and agricultural opportunities. The difference is that instead of taking from others, he's now learning how to create value, how to make the earth itself more productive and profitable. The merchant, a shrewd but honest man named William Hartwell, offers to accompany Tom to view the property. "I know the previous owner," he explains. "Good man, honest in his dealings, but getting too old for the physical demands of farming. He's asking a fair price, 20 pieces of 8 for the land, house, and basic equipment. Another few pieces would get you enough seeds and supplies to plant your first crop." Tom does quick calculations in his head. 24 pieces minus 20 for the land would leave him with just 4 pieces for seeds, tools, and living expenses until his first harvest. It would be tight, requiring careful management and probably some additional income from odd jobs or short trading ventures. But as they ride out to inspect the property, Tom realizes that his concerns about money are misplaced. The land itself is more beautiful than he had dared to hope. 15 acres of gently rolling hills with rich, dark soil that feels almost alive when he crumbles it between his fingers. A small stream runs along one border, providing fresh water year-round. The house is modest but solid, with a covered porch that faces east to catch the morning sun. Standing in the middle of what might become his sugar-cane field, Tom feels something he hasn't experienced since his earliest days at sea: the thrill of unlimited possibility. This land could become anything he chooses to make it. With hard work, careful planning, and a little luck, it could provide not just a living, but a legacy. William watches Tom's face as he surveys the property, recognizing the expression of someone who has found what he's been looking for. "It's good land," he says quietly. "The previous owner grew tobacco here for 12 years, never had a failed crop. The soil will support sugarcane just as well, maybe better." Tom nods, his decision already made. "I'll take it," he says simply. 20 pieces of 8, as you said. The transaction is completed that afternoon in Spanish Town's small but busy commercial district. Tom signs papers he barely understands, transferring ownership of the land from one man to another through the mysterious alchemy of law and commerce. His 20 pieces of 8 disappear into official hands, but in return he receives something far more valuable: a deed with his name on it, proof that he now owns a piece of the earth itself. With 4 pieces of silver remaining, Tom faces the challenge of establishing himself as a farmer. He spends 1 piece on basic tools: a hoe, a spade, a machete for clearing brush. Another piece goes toward sugarcane seedlings from a local nursery. The 3rd piece purchases basic supplies: salt, flour, oil, and other necessities that will sustain him while he waits for his first crop to mature. His final piece of 8 he saves for emergencies, tucking it away in a small wooden box that he hides beneath a loose floorboard in his new home. It's his safety net, his connection to his pirate past, and his insurance against the uncertainties of agricultural life. As Tom settles into his new routine, the rhythm of his days changes completely. Instead of scanning the horizon for Spanish sails, he watches the sky for signs of rain. Instead of maintaining weapons and rigging, he tends to seedlings and irrigation channels. Instead of sharing his evenings with rowdy pirates in smoky taverns, he spends quiet hours on his porch, watching the sun set over his own land. The transformation is not immediate or easy. Tom's hands, hardened by years of handling ropes and swords, must learn the gentlest skills of coaxing plants from soil. His eyes, trained to read wind and weather for sailing purposes, must adapt to recognizing the subtle signs that indicate crop health or disease. His social instincts, developed in the rough camaraderie of pirate crews, must adjust to the more measured relationships of farming communities. But gradually, over weeks and months, the transformation takes hold. Tom's sugarcane seedlings grow tall and strong, their leaves rustling in the trade winds that once filled his ship's sails. His small vegetable garden provides fresh food for his table, and his fruit trees begin to show the first signs of future harvests. More importantly, Tom begins to understand how his pirate treasure has truly been spent. It wasn't wasted on temporary pleasures or meaningless luxuries. Instead, it was invested in transformation, his own transformation from a man who took from others to one who creates value, from someone who lived day to day to someone who plans for seasons and years ahead. The silver that once belonged to Spanish colonists, mined from South American mountains by indigenous hands, carried across oceans in treasure galleons and captured by Caribbean pirates, has now become the foundation for legitimate prosperity. Tom's farm produces food that feeds his community, provides employment for local workers, and contributes to the complex economy that sustains colonial Jamaica. On quiet evenings, as Tom sits on his porch watching his sugarcane wave in the breeze, he sometimes thinks about his former shipmates. Some are probably still sailing the Caribbean, still seeking the next Spanish prize. Others have likely met the violent end that claims so many pirates: death in battle, execution by colonial authorities, or simple drowning in the storms that regularly sweep the region. But some, Tom knows, have probably made transitions similar to his own. They've taken their share of treasure and used it to build new lives, new identities, new contributions to the world beyond piracy. The silver that flows through pirate communities doesn't just disappear. It transforms into shops and farms, into marriages and families, into the solid foundations of legitimate society. This transformation represents the most important but least understood aspect of how pirates actually spent their gold. It wasn't just about immediate gratification or reckless waste. It was about purchasing the possibility of change, of growth, of becoming something more than what circumstances had originally made them. As our story draws toward its close, let your breathing slow and deepen, allowing yourself to drift into the peaceful rhythm of Tom's new life. The silver is mostly gone now, converted into land and tools and seedlings, but its value has been multiplied rather than diminished. What began as Spanish treasure has become the foundation for a life of honest productivity and community contribution. The sugarcane rustles gently in the night breeze, and somewhere in the distance, tree frogs sing their ancient songs. Tom's transformation from pirate to farmer is nearly complete, but the silver that made it possible continues its own transformation. From currency into crops, from treasure into sustenance, from stolen wealth into honest prosperity. In the end, this is how pirates actually spent all their gold. Not on buried treasure or hoarded wealth, but on the things that make life worth living: companionship, celebration, generosity, and the courage to change. The booze, the games, the shared meals and stories, the investments in friendship and community, the stake money for new beginnings, all of these were simply different forms of the same fundamental purchase: the opportunity to be fully human in a world that often denied them that possibility. Tom's story is the story of thousands of pirates who chose transformation over treasure, community over individual wealth, the richness of shared experience over the emptiness of hoarded gold. Their silver may be long spent, but the life it purchased, the farms they built, the communities they joined, the families they raised, the legitimate businesses they established, became part of the foundation of the modern Caribbean world. As you drift towards sleep, carried by the gentle rhythm of this story, remember that the true treasure was never the gold itself, but what it could be transformed into. In taverns and gaming houses, in acts of generosity and friendship, in the courage to start over and build something new, the pirates of the Caribbean discovered riches that no Spanish strongbox could ever contain. Let the soft Caribbean breeze carry you now toward peaceful dreams, where sugarcane waves in moonlight and the gentle sounds of a prosperous farm replace the crash of ocean waves. The treasure has been spent, but its value lives on in the transformation it made possible, the eternal human alchemy that turns silver into hope, gold into growth, and wealth into the wisdom to know that the greatest riches are those we share with others. Sleep now, and dream of warm trade winds and fertile soil, of communities built on generosity and lives transformed by the courage to change. The pirates have spent their gold, but they've purchased something far more valuable: the opportunity to become who they were always meant to be.